Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. Can you hear me all right? Can you hear me if I stand like here? Okay. So I don't want to be like, I need to see my laptop somehow. How are you all doing today? Are you having a nice DjangoCon? Yeah. Woo! Nice. It's not every day you have a conference where you can just look out into the ocean. It's very nice. Cool. So I'm here to talk about how to monetize your side project, and I'm very excited to give this talk. I was looking through the schedule and realized I get to be the guy that gives the business talk at the tech conference, which is an honor. And we actually have quite a lot to get through. So hopefully we can make it all through. So a little bit on me. I love building side projects. So here's some of what I've worked on in the past. I've always kind of had a main gig and then a side project happening at the same time. SimplePoll is one of the most popular apps for Slack, and it's been a side project for a long time. Then it became my main business my main job for quite a few years, with Kolo becoming a side project for SimplePoll. And then, as of a few months ago, I now work full-time on Kolo. More on Kolo in a little bit, but basically what we're focusing on is helping you automatically generate Django integration tests. And we're also sponsoring the conference as Kolo, so you might have seen our booth downstairs. All right, I want to ask or start with a few questions. So please raise your hand if you're currently working on a side project. Okay, amazing. Don't be shy, can be anything. All right, keep your hands up. Keep your hands up if you're working on a side project. And keep them up now if you would like to monetize the side project, because you've come to the right talk. You don't have to monetize a side project, right? It can be just for fun. All right, that's most of you. Yeah, for the recording, I guess maybe 60% of hands are raised. Changed it a little bit. And then if you went down, who has already monetized it? Okay, so that's maybe 5 hands remaining. Cool, awesome. Thank you, that's really interesting. So this talk is basically split into 2 different sections. So we're going to talk first about lessons learned from monetizing SimplePoll, which has kind of been the main thing I've monetized, the main thing I spent a good chunk of my life on now. And then kind of part 2 is how we're thinking about monetizing Kolo. So how are we actually applying some of the lessons learned from the previous thing to actually monetize Kolo and make that a paid product. So I'm keen to kind of give you a little bit of a look behind the scenes for both of these. So might be worth refreshing a little bit, what's actually the goal with monetizing a side project? Because there's a lot of different reasons you might want to do it, and it might actually be quite helpful for you to get clear on your own reasons for doing this. But a lot of the reasons tend to be flexibility, making money while you're not working. So I think typically, you have this idea that you exchange your time for money, you show up at your job and you get paid for that. Wouldn't it be nice if you can make money while you're sleeping and you don't have to exchange your time for money? Being your own boss, financial independence, deciding what you get to work on, all of these are kind of the goal of how, what would be nice, a nice outcome for us monetizing our side project. However, this is a difficult place to get to. I don't know if any of you are familiar with this meme. It's quite a lot, right? We tried to recreate this earlier today downstairs. So how do we actually do this? How do we make this leap? Well, you kind of take it one step at a time. So there's a really fun framework which is really kind of well spread in the indie hacker bootstrapper community, which is called the stairstep method by someone called Rob Walling. He published this blog post I think around a decade ago, and it's still very much a go-to resource. So for anyone who's really considering monetizing their side project, I'd recommend you actually just read the whole post yourself, because it's really not that long. So roughly what it looks like is you have these 3 steps, and really the step number 1 is to keep it simple. I don't know if you can read this all the way at the back, but step 1 is to just have one predictable marketing channel. for like one product. And specifically what he talks about here is actually having a plugin for an existing platform. So he mentions WordPress, Heroku, Shopify, Simple Poll is a Slack app. So I feel like I very much did this. But the goal is to keep it simple. There's like a lot of advice out there for how to build a startup, for how to build a business. And if you try and follow all of it, you will like never get anything done, basically. So step one is very much like keep it simple, focus on like one marketing channel, and focus on just, yeah, getting a little bit of revenue. It can be like, totally can be like one-off revenue. I think that's actually the recommendation. And then step two is to just keep doing this until you actually like own your own time. So if you have like one, let's say you have, I don't know, maybe you've built a WordPress plugin, let's say, and you're making some money from that, maybe it's not enough for you to like fully quit your job. He's actually saying, keep repeating step one, build another thing, while keeping your main job, and just build up the experience, build up like these diversified revenue streams, and then after you've kind of bought back your time, or you own your own time, then you can kind of like use all of that experience, all of that like foundation of incoming revenue, which might be one-off, might be recurring, to then build like a standalone SaaS product. I think often the dream is like, let's like get to this incredible state of having like recurring revenue coming in every month, don't need to do any more work, it's just customers are happy to pay, maybe there's a little bit of development, but that's like a really, really hard place to get to, and very easy to burn out trying to like very easy trying to like, if you just walk through the world like this, very easy to like not be happy and burn out. So the stair-step method is kind of like very much the recommended path, and like I haven't like seen, or Rob Walling runs an accelerator and also a big conference called MicroConf, and he's seen a lot of like startup successes up front, or up close, and he's seen this kind of approach work out like again and again. So this is kind of broadly the way to go. So a little bit of context on Simple Poll, to give you a little bit of the lessons learned from that project specifically for me. It very much started, this is what it does. It basically, you can create polls and surveys very natively inside of Slack. And it started like very humbly as like just like a Django admin start project. And that was all the way back in 2015. Now it's like one of the most popular Slack apps, millions of dollars in revenue, millions of users. The way it works is a freemium model. So there's tons and tons of free users, and then like a small minority of paying customers. And customers pay this much. And the distribution channel is predominantly the Slack app directory and Google search. So I mentioned this because this talk is how to monetize your side project, but really, as you'll see, it's going to be a talk about like distribution. So if there's like one thing that I think you'll take away from this talk is when you think about monetization, think about distribution and how you're going to distribute your product and who you're going to distribute it to. So for Simple Poll, very much like what worked incredibly well, almost within a few months of launch, is just being listed on the Slack app directory. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. There's a team of 7 working on Simple Poll today, and yeah, after like a lot of years building Simple Poll, I just handed it off to a new CEO earlier this year, and now I work full-time on Kolo, which is a very exciting change. All right, very quickly the timeline, and also just to give like a little bit of context on how long it's been in the making. Yeah, wow, you can't read this at all. All right, so I'll walk you through it. So December 2015 is when the Slack platform launched. So Slack was like in its infancy, and they wanted to get apps onto Slack. So they made a big kind of event and like an announcement saying, hey, please build apps for Slack. And I saw that and I thought, I really like Slack, I'm going to build an app for this. And then, yeah, the following month, literally within like, I think I spent only like a few days working on it, Simple Poll launched. And someone else actually found it on, I just tweeted about it, someone else put it on Product Hunt, and I kind of woke up the next day and like 600 companies were like actually using it, including NASA. So it was kind of like a blown away kind of moment. And then I listed in the Slack app directory later that month, and what was kind of wild is that from the moment it got listed in the app directory, that like channel brought in like 200 new Slack workspaces every single working day. So I just built a thing, but because I could list it on this like Slack app store, Slack was sending me like 200 potential customers like every single day. And that is very much like what made it possible to monetize Simple Poll later. So that single distribution channel is like a huge part of the success. Obviously it was the right product, like at the right time, and the product actually had to work, and I think it really helped that it was simple, but very much the distribution channel of the Slack app directory was kind of like a key, crucial ingredient. So that happens in early 2016. It's just a completely free product until October 2018. That's when I decided to monetize it by adding a paid plan. And then I actually just, kind of like supported it and didn't really, just kind of watched it slowly grow in revenue. Until July 2019, when it was just so much support load that I brought in someone else to help. And then in September 2019, roughly a year after monetizing it, it had grown to be like more than my salary at my job, and that's when I decided to quit and like focus on it full time. So to recap very quickly, simple is good. This is kind of like step one of the stair-step method from Rob Walling. With Simple Poll, like the value is very clear to the user. It's polls in Slack, and people want to poll their coworkers, which is great, very straightforward for users to understand, and it's also just like very easy for me to build. So I built the first version literally like in a weekend. So that was a really nice way to just get something out and validate it quickly. I talked already about like how distribution is absolutely everything. From the day we listed on the Slack app directory, just having like 200 potential customers like every single weekday. We can't like convert all of them, by the way. Like some of them are like companies like NASA or whatever, or big companies with deep pockets. But sometimes it's like New Jersey pickleball, and you're never going to charge them any money. But still, it's like a huge number, and you can do something with that number. And then the middle point I haven't really spoken about, so this idea that demand takes like time to grow. I think like as like software engineers, we're kind of familiar with the idea that if you want to make and build a big complex project, it's going to take time to build. Like you can't just hit a button and like a whole working like full stack web app appears. Like we know that it takes time to like it might take like 3 months to ship like the first version of something. The same is actually true for demand. Like I think sometimes there's a misconception that like you will spend like weeks, months building something, and then you will launch it, and then everyone will see the launch, you will be covered in TechCrunch, and like you'll get all these users. In reality, like it's not like that at all. Like launches bring in like very, very few customers, and really like it's about having this sustainable distribution channel. And that means that demand takes time. So like you need to give your own users who you want to charge time to actually discover the product and pay for the product, and that's how the revenue will grow. So just to give like one example of this, when, so that October 2018, when I monetized Simple Poll, I'd been running for 3 years, had like hundreds of thousands of like monthly active users, but had no revenue, and I decided to have some premium features and start charging some users for it. And I thought, cool, like I'll turn on revenue, and then I'll make like maybe a few $1,000s a month. And I remember like a week into it, it was like $300. And I thought, shit, this like totally isn't working. I thought I had something great here, but I only have like $300 a month. Like I can't live off that. That's ridiculous. Maybe I can monetize this thing. But then I was amazed how like every month that just continued, it was another $1,000 in like recurring revenue. So like in November it was 1,300. In December it was like 2,000. In like January it was like 2,500. So it grew a little bit every time. But had I delayed the monetization by like another 3 months, it would have delayed all of that process of the revenue building up by another 3 months. So I think like this sounds like reasonably simple, but I don't think it's actually very intuitive. Like that demand takes time to build, and like revenue takes time to build. But that's very much a thing. So the advice there is just like launch quickly. This is a blank slide somehow. Yeah, back to the main point of this talk, like distribution. I think this is like a line that gets posted sometimes, like this kind of belief that like if you just build it, like developer or like customers will just show up because your product is so great. And in a way, like the product obviously matters, but if you build it and don't do anything, like people won't find it, and it'll feel quite demoralizing. So I think the only version in which this statement can be true is if you essentially change it like this. So if you build it and have an amazing distribution channel, then they will come. But often like products, like if you had to predict the success of two products, one is like an amazing product with no distribution channel, and another product has like a working distribution channel, but is like crappy to use, has like bad UX, like doesn't really work all the time, the product with the better distribution channel actually will win, or is actually going to have paying customers. And I think that's like really, really important to realize. So we keep talking about distribution channels. What does this actually mean? So here's like a couple of ones that just give you maybe some idea. Like sending emails, this actually works. Like you can send people emails and some of them will read them and some of them will like click on it. So if you have like an existing, existing email list or like an existing newsletter, I think that can be really effective. Blog posts, search I think is often overlooked. Like people often search for things, and actually you can use tools to see what people search for. And if people search for something and then they find your thing and it helps them, that's like an incredibly reliable way to like have a distribution channel. So search is like, I think, often under-considered. Again, I think in this world where we think like, we have a make or break great product and then we launch it and then that's how people find out about it. Search gets like a little bit forgotten about. And I'll skip actually quickly ahead to this. So these are two tools that you could use. One is called Ahrefs and one is called SEMrush. You can use to like figure out what are people searching for and are people searching for your thing. But basically the point is just like search is a good channel. For Simple Poll, obviously we build it on top of a platform, so build it on top of Slack. Also a fantastic distribution channel. I think the advice from Rob Walling and the stairstep approach is to just like pick one of these and just do it really well. I actually think you can maybe do a trifecta of like, have a blog, email people when there's new blog posts, and then obviously those blog posts are listed for search. So you kind of get 3 channels almost like at the price of 1, and I think that can be like really effective. Yeah, if you have like a great big audience on social media, if you happen to be a Django influencer, I'm not sure actually if there is a big Django influencer. Maybe Adam, it's the closest we've got. Adam Johnson. But otherwise, yeah, you can always build an audience on social media. I actually think we need more Django memes. If anyone really has a deep desire to like build a Django meme account, I think that would be a great contribution to the community. And you could then sell them some product, as in us, a product later on that relates to Django. I would very much advise against just doing paid advertisement. I think I used to think this. It's kind of an extension of the just launch and they will come. It's like, just launch and then pay Google for ads and then people will come. I don't think this really works. I think advertisement works if you've got like a working channel and a working message and a working product and you just need to scale it up. I think then advertisement can work, but I would very much suggest avoiding paid ads at the very beginning. Cool, we covered the search stuff, but yeah, the main message of the talk is really like, you need to think about distribution. You thought you came here to learn about pricing techniques and how much you should charge for your product, but really like, it's all about distribution. If you can nail and figure out distribution, then like monetizing is gonna become really, really straightforward. Cool. Yeah, I think like the thing that I almost struggled about like including the slide or not, because it feels like, yeah, obviously like a product should create value. And that's kind of how businesses think about purchasing software, or how users think about purchasing a product. Like, this thing needs to be useful for me. It feels a bit like almost not worth saying. But I think like the thing worth calling out is like, ask yourself if the thing you've built saves people time or saves people money. If it doesn't do like one of the two, maybe figure out how it can be one of those, how it can do one of those two things to be really useful. Even if it's just sort of in the messaging of like, hey, use my thing and you will save time or you will save money. That's like the most effective way. So that kind of goes into like how to think about the product. All right, I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit here. Is anyone familiar with this concept of painkillers versus vitamins in business? Nice, couple hands. So just to like briefly go over this, and again, this goes back to like creating value and saving time and versus saving money. Painkillers solve like an urgent problem, something that immediately saves someone or a business ideally time and money. So I think like a good example would be like production downtime detection. Like if your production server is down, like that's a really, really urgent problem. So if you're selling a service that does that, then that's a painkiller and that's kind of the place to be. Whereas vitamins are more kind of gradual, like long-term benefits. There's no urgent need for them. Maybe like if you had built something gives like A, B, C, D, E, F rating for like a code base. That's like kind of nice to have, but is it maybe super urgent to get your code base from like a B grade to an A grade? Perhaps not. And maybe the kind of more consumer examples would be Uber versus Duolingo. So like Duolingo doesn't really immediately solve any kind of urgent pain. It kind of helps you learn a language like gradually over time. That's great, and it's useful to be able to speak another language. But it's very different to an app like Uber, where you are somewhere and maybe there's no bus or no public transport, or you just need to get from A to B and quickly, and then you're going to reach for something like Uber. Cool, all right. So I'm going to wrap this up with two things. First is my monetization hot takes. So going back to the beginning, start simple, follow the stair-step approach, and yeah, just try and keep it simple. Don't quit your job yet. Keep your job while monetizing your side project. I think this is actually a little bit of an, I'll say a couple more things on this because I think it's sometimes misunderstood. Like the goal is to like work on your own thing and maybe have your whole full time to do that. But even if you've maybe passed that step one, and maybe you have a little bit of income coming in, like say you're making like $1,000, 1,000 euros, 1,000 pounds a month, and you're thinking, okay, well, if I can only work on this, if I only worked on this for 10 hours a month or 10 hours a week, I can make like way more money if I work on it full time. I think often it doesn't actually work like this. I learned this the hard way. When I quit my job, I thought, okay, now that I'm working on this 40 hours a week instead of 10 hours a week, my growth should 4x. And actually, after I quit my job that following month was the first month where the revenue declined. So it's like, I was like, this is not right. Like, dear customers, I have been supporting you on very little time for a year, and this is how you reward my additional investment. So I think these things are just like not very obvious from the get-go. And it's actually really nice to have a job. It's like provides a super great layer of stability. It also forces you to prioritize. If you can only like add like one thing to your project, like on the weekend or in an evening, you kind of make sure that it forces you to add like the most important thing, like the thing that you think will get you closer to being able to quit your job, gets you closer to like more revenue or closer to like a feature someone's been requesting. Whereas if you're on something like full time, it's actually, and I've done this many, many times, I'm very guilty of this, it lets you just build a lot of things that maybe aren't so critical because you think you have more time and more space. So keep your job. Number 3, again, like maybe this is totally obvious, but you want to serve businesses, not consumers. Consumers have very little disposable income. They like to complain. They like to churn. If you serve businesses, those problems will be reduced. And then yeah, distribution. If this slide could say just like one thing, it would just be distribution, distribution, distribution. Very much related to that, if you have competitors, that's a good thing. I think there's always a really, really big emotional load that comes when you see that someone's building the thing that you're also building, and you're like, oh, they're ripping me off. But actually, and that's like totally a fair emotion to feel, and it sucks. But it means that there is someone else in this space who believes that there's like money to be made here. So in a way, it's actually really great validation that you're working on kind of the right thing. Demand takes time to build, so ship as early as you can, talked about that. Number 7, yeah, start charging for what you're building, even if you're not super happy with the product yet. It's a great sign if someone's willing to pay for what you've built, even though the experience is still rough. I think, yeah, again, this can be like a little bit strange, but if what you've built doesn't have the greatest user experience and people are still willing to pay money for it, that means you're solving like a real problem for them and they're willing to wade through difficulty to like get that value. Ideally, sell a painkiller, not a vitamin. Number 9, kind of like a bonus thing, cheat code. If you can compete in like an existing space or make something that already exists, that means you're basically that person I described earlier, where you're like coming into an existing product category, and maybe you add a tweak, or you kind of have some maybe small unique insight that changes changes maybe the audience or the value prop just a tiny bit, and then you can compete in an existing space with an existing category, and you will have competition like from day one, but it doesn't mean like there's money, like people are spending in that space, and yeah, people are spending in that space, and they can just, yeah, you can compete and you can grow some revenue there. You're not kind of like starting from zero. And yeah, this stuff is just like really hard. Take it easy and enjoy the journey. Like, don't be too, oh, sorry, could I have some water by any chance? Just feeling a little bit, all right. And then, yeah, lastly, community. So there's a lot of really great resources out there. A couple of them are here. So yeah, check out like Indie Hackers, check out MicroConf, lots of really great podcasts. Cool. So next up, how we're thinking of actually monetizing Kolo. So this is like a little bit different. It's kind of like my second act. So there's a few different things happening with this. Some of you might be familiar with the kind of original Kolo. We talked about this past few DjangoCons. Basically, you can visualize and like understand existing code bases really quickly. But we actually have a new Kolo that we're kind of presenting at this conference. So, new Kolo is, testing should be easy, whereas old Kolo is understand everything your code is doing. And this goes back a little bit to the like painkiller versus vitamin analogy. So with old Kolo, we were kind of a vitamin. We were providing you with visualizations and faster debugging and like deeper insight. Whereas with new Kolo, we generate integration tests for you. So the idea there is testing is tricky and hard and like can take a lot of time, and maybe it doesn't like immediately create business value, or you don't have as much time for it. So Kolo generates integration tests for you, and therefore it's a bit more of an immediate painkiller. So our new kind of slogan is testing should be easy, and we kind of have this set up here where it's, yeah, okay, this is like our leaflet. You can grab one at the booth below. I don't think you can super well see this except for what it says at the top. But basically what Kolo does is it runs over your code base and traces existing, or traces requests. So if you make like a request to your Django app, Kolo will store a trace. From that trace, which is basically like every function call, every SQL query, every outbound request in the request that you made, it can generate a plan, and then from that plan, it can generate a test. So I just want to quickly give you a demo of what that actually looks like. Okay. Amazing. So, can you see this all right? Somewhat all right? So we have like just a basic to-do demo app here, and then we have Kolo open on the left. So this is all the most recent requests that like Kolo stored. And I'm just going to add a to-do here that's like, give a talk, and add that to-do. And then it will add that to-do and also add a ChatGPT-generated fortune cookie advice saying, your words will spark inspiration in the heart of another. Cool. If you feel that way after the talk, come up to me. If I touched your heart, that would mean a lot. But then we can go into Kolo, and inside Kolo, we can essentially like see this generated test. So just from this single request that I just made to my like locally running Django app, I have this test plan generated by Kolo, which comes in these three sections, like arrange, act, and assert. And so Kolo knows that before it can like actually write a test or send the same request in the Django test client, it needs to like arrange these two things. So the first is just creating a user, right? Before we can make a request as the user to add a to-do, we have to actually create the user in the database. In this case, we also need an HTTP mock. Then we can actually fire off the request, and then we can make some assertions. We can make some changes, but I think this test is fine for now, for demo purposes. So I'm going to go ahead and save it, open it in VS Code, and then I'm actually going to go ahead and just run PyTest to run it. and it passed. So this is just from that simple request that I just made in the browser to like add a to-do in my demo app, Kolo generated like a fully working integration test that I can now change or edit or modify. This was a very simple example. It does also work on like much more complex code bases, like the simple poll code base. If you're interested in this at all, like come to our booth and we can like show you more about how it works. We have a nice leaflet that explains it all a little bit more. But basically, we think testing should be easy, and if you agree, then come to our booth and we'll help you like get set up with Kolo. And yeah, or if you want to just chat about testing, that's also very much cool. Okay, back to the slides. Where did they go? Stop mirroring. Ah, gorgeous. That's actually quite nice. Cool. I want to talk a little bit about the inside scoop for Kolo now, and like the monetization paths that we actually rejected. Because I think it's like nice to hear like the simple poll story like a few years on, but this is like some of the stuff that we're actually going through right now. So Kolo is a completely free product at the moment. It's like not monetized at all. So like how are we thinking about monetization? And in which case am I not like taking my own advice? So a few things we considered in terms of monetizations. One is like donations. And again, you might be considering this for your project. For us, we don't really think that donations would like bring in enough to like build a sustainable business model. It tends to be quite one-off. We want to work on Kolo like quite a lot and make it like a business that can like employ several people. And I don't think we can really get there with donations. There's also a consideration of like, okay, so a lot of the existing Kolo functionality is kind of like a premium Django debug toolbar. Like, could we make that like a business? But Django debug toolbar already exists and is pretty good and is free. And the question is like, can we really add that much value on top of an existing, like on top of Django debug toolbar? And the value that we add, is it like more of a vitamin or is it more of a painkiller? I think there's maybe a case to be made that Django debug toolbar is often a vitamin and sometimes a painkiller. So for us, it was a little bit too much vitamin. Another idea was doing a PyCharm plugin. That's like, so in the past, Kolo was VS Code only. Now we have a web version, so it kind of supports all editors. In fact, you could use no editor and use Kolo today. And PyCharm was a very popular request. So the thought was, can we charge for a PyCharm plugin? And we kind of rejected that path because it's kind of like only like one audience. Again, it's unclear. Is there like a recurring charge we can make here, or is it more of a one-off thing? And again, like, is there kind of a vitamin, or is there kind of a painkiller aspect to it? And yeah, the same for these kind of bottom two. So in a hosted Kolo SaaS, like again, is it just an extension of the current thing? Like how much value can we really create here? So for all of these, I guess they kind of failed almost like the value tests. Like how much value are we actually creating? And we think by focusing on like generating tests, that's where Kolo is the most useful right now and solves the biggest pain. Right, that's pretty much what I just said. So testing, writing tests can be like a very recurring pain that happens like in your day-to-day quite a bit. We're kind of here at this conference to like validate that that's actually the case and see if you all like want to use this stuff and if it's actually useful to you and how we can tweak it to make it really useful to you and tweak it to use to your own testing strategy. And then kind of monetize once we've creating a significant value. So Kolo, yeah, at the moment, as I mentioned, is completely free. There'll likely be some kind of paid version in the future once we've made sure that we're actually building something really, really useful that is a true like painkiller. And then over the long term, and this is where it gets like a little bit, far into the future, our core belief is that like this underlying like runtime data that Kolo is capturing can be used for like tons of different things. So it can be used to like understand the code base more quickly. It can be used to like improve your day-to-day development experience a little bit. It can be used to maybe dig deeper into like production errors without having to like reproduce them manually or painstakingly. So we have like a kind of fun, exciting, like long-term vision for all the different things that like Kolo might be able to do. I appreciate you can't really read any of this. The top left says automatically generate tests. And then the middle column is kind of understanding. So lots of ideas for how to use like this runtime data, these like traces Kolo collects. But the reason we're focusing on test generation in the short term is very much like all the reasons I explained in this talk. We think it's like the biggest value. We think it's the most immediate like pain that we can actually help with. And it doesn't really exist yet. Cool, that's the talk. If you want to learn more, find us at the booth or head to kolo.app/testgen. And if you want to talk about monetizing your side project, I'm also here all day and Saturday morning at the sprints. So come find me, and yeah, would love to chat. Thank you all.